Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hormonally Speaking. Have a really fun and special guest today who is going to cover some areas for those of you that are essentially becoming leaders in really whatever field that you're stepping into, but particularly in the sort of health world that so many of us are through our own experiences, and healing our own bodies, and then really stepping up in order to help others in their process and their healing journey, and how to do all of that work without burning yourself out, right? Because we certainly know that culturally, all around the world, really, women are pushed to do it all, and that's not working for our bodies. So I'm really happy to speak with Jenn Pike, who is a medical exercise specialist and functional diagnostic nutritionist specializing in women's health and hormones. She's the best-selling author of 3 books, including The Simplicity Project, The Simplicity Kitchen, and The Simplicity Body. She is the fiercely driven founder of the Hormone Project, Synced, and The Audacious Woman. Potentially powerful programs dedicated to empowering and teaching women what they should have known about their bodies all along, the incredible healing abilities, wisdom, and power they hold, and how to bring them to life. Jenn sits on the advisory board for Strong Fitness Magazine and serves you up weekly doses of education, wisdom, and inspiration on the Simplicity Sessions podcast, which has been in Apple's top 200 in health since its debut in September 2018, and her channel Simplicity TV on YouTube. As an inspired wife and mom of 2, she understands that true well-being as a woman is a journey to be enjoyed and not a struggle to be forced. Hear, hear. She will inspire you to cut the BS and create more simplicity and ease in all you do. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you do a lot, as we can just tell from that bio. So let's back up, because as we were talking about a little bit before we came on here, I don't think simplicity was always the name of the game for you, right?
No, simplicity was the goal.
Yes. So in the beginning, before you started doing all of this work, were you in this overwhelmed state that so many women find themselves in?
Yeah, for sure. And part of it is that, it sounds like when we read it out like that, it sounds like a lot of stuff, but there really is this way to marry our passions and our, zone of work of genius that we're in a way that it's not like you have to do 7 different things. It's like you can blend your 7 different passions or whatever it is and show up. Like when I'm teaching about exercise, well, I'm talking and teaching about that as I'm teaching about hormones, as I'm teaching about this, that, or the other. But many years ago, I've been in the industry now, this is my 25th year in practice. I've been in the fitness industry teaching since I was 17, personal training since 19, working with athletes, on a high level, energetic space in my early 20s, and then moving all of that over to focusing on women's health and hormones specifically for about the last 13 solid years in practice. And before then, like before I had my babies, before I had kids who are now not babies, they're 14 and 16, I just chased after my paycheck and I said yes to every single opportunity. And then I created every single other opportunity that I desired that didn't exist out there. So I've never been afraid to work hard. I've always enjoyed work. I've always enjoyed money and earning. I've always enjoyed teaching and creating impact. So none of those things were hard for me when it was just me. And I didn't have to, raise a family and take care of a home and all of those other things. But when I had my first daughter at 26, that was like, oh, this is now very different. And it was a beautiful lesson for so many reasons, but it not only helped me see myself in a different light, but the women I was working with. And I feel like when I had my first child, I actually started to really hear what the women were telling me, as opposed to just like, when they would say, I'm so tired, I'm so this, I'm so that. And I'd be like, let's keep moving. We're here to work out. So we're just going to like pack the fatigue away and still show up.
Yeah.
When women started to communicate that with me, I would just be like, tell me more. Like, why do you like, are you physically tired? Are you like, is your soul exhausted? Are you spiritually exhausted? Like, what? Like, tell me more. And when I created that opportunity for other women to hold the space and to be heard and truly feel seen, everything started to change. And I very clearly can remember these moments of, I am now going to be doing everything different. And so in the beginning, that didn't help my own burnout. It made it actually worse for a period of time because I opened up my own brick and mortar studio space and I had a team and overhead, and it was wonderful and so hard all at the same time. Because, you know, I just want to help everyone. You know, I'm very driven by community and I just want to support everyone. And I was doing that at the expense of my own health and my body and my family. And so when I had my second child, things shifted again. And then I hit like probably my bottom burnout, which I've talked about a lot. Like I moved onto the couch for 4 days essentially, and I just couldn't function. I was at that place that so many women get to, where I went from over caring about everything and everyone to, I don't give a crap
about anybody.
Yeah. I do not care. I don't care if my teeth are brushed. I don't care if my hair is washed. I do not care. I can't. And that was very much for me, like, who is that? I'd never known that side of me. And that is where I had to, you know, after 4 days of being in that energy, sit up tall and just be like, you have two choices. You can either continue suppressing how you really feel and just suck it up and keep serving for everyone and do what you're quote unquote supposed to do. Or you can realize this is your life and you actually get to design this, and this is your business and you get to create that. And this is your family and you get to raise them and do the things that you want to do. So what are you going to choose, Jen? And that's where everything completely shifted for me. And that was in 2012. So, you know, 10 years ago. And it's been this journey of, in that moment, I decided to do everything differently. I threw out the old business plan. I started to get to work on my own. I had to heal my relationship with energy and time and money. And, you know, this belief that as women, we just had to be it all for everyone. And I think that, you know, for everyone that's listening, none of us have had the exact same background, but we all grew up in a time where, you know, as women, historically, we watched our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers be the you know, the matrons of the house, take care of the home, take care of the children. Like that's what they did. And then we fought to have the opportunity to have our babies and our careers that we didn't want to. Some do, but a lot of us didn't want to be stay-at-home mothers. We wanted to have a career and we wanted to be stimulated in different ways and we wanted to contribute. And that's all great, but we also still then had the children and the home and everything else to take care of. So as women, we tend to have a disproportionate amount of responsibility.
Absolutely.
That societally is put on us, but then we also put on ourselves. Or, you know, it's like if you grew up in that household where that was the woman's job, well, then that's everyone's expectation of you.
Yes.
Or, you know, maybe you grew up in an environment where you had to survive in a different way that was very much, you had to shoulder all of it yourself. I work with a lot of women where they're like, I had to raise my siblings. I was a mom when I was a teen. You know, I'm a single parent. So it's so different for all of us. Yet at the end of the day, there's not a woman I talk to who, when she's being really honest with herself, doesn't admit that she's losing parts of herself and that she is feeling really worn down. And that's when symptoms start to show up.
Absolutely.
Right. That's when we think our hormones are a mess, or, you know, our body is breaking down and whatever it may be. And there's oftentimes just so much more to it.
Absolutely. And there's so many good things that you said in there, but I want to go back to the, you know, time that you had that kind of complete burnout, because I think it's really important for women to understand if and when they hit that point, there is a way out, right? And it doesn't have to be, you know, you are going to have to be in bed for a year. You know, it doesn't have to be this, I have to just sort of be in this and still push through and just take every last little bit of juice I have to take care of everybody else. It's really, I mean, I think what you said is so important, is that we are the ones that are in control. Ultimately, you know, we are in control of our lives, and we have to decide, how am I going to move forward? And that's actually what heals the burnout more than anything else, right? Once you take back that power, because, you know, I look at, you know, people still call it adrenal fatigue, but we'll call it adrenal dysregulation, right? Has so much to do with that feeling of lack of power, with that feeling of, I have to do these things for other people all of the time, right? And I'm not getting enough in return.
Exactly.
And, you know, I personally, everybody who's listening to the podcast for a while knows about my own fibroid experience, you know, and I had the fibroid removed, and they unknowingly burned me in 3 places in my intestines during that surgery. And I ended up in the hospital with sepsis 2 weeks later, lost half of my colon, you know, on and on, ostomy bag for 6.5 months. But, you know, when it came down to my healing, I went back to, why did I have this fibroid in the first place? And it's this exact same thing that we're talking about, right? And considering 70 to 80% of women will experience a fibroid by the time they're 50, you know, we have to start asking why. It's not just our bodies hate us.
No. And that is it, is, you know, in my whole ethos of everything I've created has been, what is the why behind the what? I believe that physically our bodies break down as women because we weren't educated on how to actually, you know, step into their superpowers and their ability. We don't understand the body that we've been born into. And that is not our fault. That is by design, in the lack of education that we've been provided. You shouldn't have to be a detective and a seeker to go get the information about your body. That is something that should have been fundamental in learning about ourselves from day one. The second side of that as well, too, is that we are so detached from listening to our body. We just keep shoving it down and shoving it down. We're afraid of what other people think. We're afraid of appearing weak. We're afraid of, you know, someone's going to take away the thing that we fought so hard to have if we admit that, you know what, we just don't have it together all the time. And it's like, we are not designed like that, period. We are not men. We do not have a 24-hour rhythm like men. Our hormones are in constant fluctuation. When we go through different things, but we have to understand that, so that when we start to feel or recognize these early warning signs, that we actually do something in response. And, you know, me having this burnout wasn't because I wasn't giving my adrenals enough B vitamins or vitamin C or because any of those things. It was because I was pushing and pushing and pushing. And when I wanted to say no, I just kept saying yes. And the things I was saying yes to weren't actually in alignment with any of the core values that I had. And I was more afraid of letting people down because they won't like me, they won't love me, they'll leave me, I won't be successful, that I didn't realize in those moments that I was creating this, you know, low grade level of inflammation that was building for years until my body was just like, we have knocked on the door quietly so many times and tried to send you the message. You just keep ignoring. We're going to knock the fucking door down. And until you pay attention, that door is going to literally lay on top of your chest so that you can't get back up. And that, it might sound dramatic for some people, but again, I work with women every single day and hear their stories and listen. And it doesn't matter where they are in the world, what is going on in their life. On some level, every woman is in that moment right now where they're either coming out of that experience, or they're like, I am on the precipice of, I feel like if I don't change something now, that's what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And as you just stated so beautifully, it is these whispers, right, for years and years. And then it gets a little louder and a little louder. And most of us, whether it's just human nature or what, we don't listen, unfortunately, until something big happens, right? Whether that's the burnout, whether for me, it was the fibroid situation, you know, it showed up in this way. And, you know, I'm always trying to share with women like how wonderful it can be when we start to listen to our bodies earlier, before it gets to that place, right? And go back to just these foundations of taking care of yourself, It's like there's so much power in the foundations that we miss out on.
Mhm.
And so, it's a struggle, and I get it. Women are just, they're so deep in their stuff for
Yeah.
them to understand how much they need to follow the rhythms of their body, to check in, to just listen to those little pangs and things that come up along the way. But really, you are going to have a breakdown if you don't
Mhm.
get there, if
Yeah.
you don't start listening. And, just another quick point of what you were saying too. I was actually just at the gynecologist yesterday because I go get my yearly vaginal ultrasound now to make
Mhm.
sure that I'm keeping fibroids at bay. And, my doctor knows very much what I went through. And, she's just like, well, it's amazing that you can do this work now to sort of help other women.
Mhm.
And I said, how amazing would it have been to actually know all of this information when I was
Yeah.
younger, to understand my cycle. I was actually ovulating while they were, in the middle of ovulation while they were doing the ultrasound. And like, how cool is that, right? That now I understand these ups and downs that my body, these ebbs and flows that my body goes through
Yeah.
them each month, and how friggin' awesome it is our body
Oh,
does
it's
that.
amazing. Our
Yeah.
bodies are our bodies are so cool, and yet the average woman is walking through life understanding less than 1% of what is going on. It's like you get into a brand new car and they include this thick owner's manual with
Right.
every single detail about how to operate your vehicle.
Yeah.
This is your vehicle of life, your body.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it is the bare minimum basics, a lot of which is actually incorrect information that is taught to our kids in school, that is taught as you get older, that is available. I mean, there's two things that happen right now. Number one, our foundational education is really not designed and taught to keep us healthy. I mean, what we see in the food guides and it's
Mm-hmm.
garbage. It
Mm-hmm.
is horrible. What is
Mm-hmm.
approved, what people are available to go and purchase in their grocery, like they are not setting us up for health, which is the frustrating part. But also when you know it and you see it, you're like, okay, this is like, I have to take it into my own hands and my own responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
I
Mm-hmm.
have to be that for me. But it's also, we live in a time now where we have over accessibility to information. So there's so many books, there's so many podcasts, there's so many YouTube channels, there's so many Instagram people to follow. And so
Mm-hmm.
if we have too many options, we shut down
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
have analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And then it makes it difficult to even know what's right. What, like, can I have carbs? Can I not? Should I be keto? Am I not
Yes.
keto? Do I fast? Do I not fast? Can I have this? Or am I, like, all of those different things? And that's where it's like having conversations like this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
investing your time and energy into understanding those roots. It's like, I will oftentimes say to people, we get so over focused on, go tell me the adrenal supplement to take today. And I'm just going to
Yes.
go buy it.
That's like the number one thing,
And then,
right?
and then I'm
I
going
just
to
want the
take
adrenal
it.
supplement. Yep.
And I'm like, well, that wouldn't be how I would recommend it. Number one, you can think that you have a certain situation. Like, you could think you have low cortisol when you actually have high cortisol
Yes.
that's just being deactivated and bound up.
Yep.
And now you go buy a product that is going to give you more energy and cortisol, and it's actually going to make you feel worse because that wasn't the situation, which is
Yes.
why we don't guess, we want to test.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of that is that supplements are to supplement your lifestyle. They are not
Yes.
called replacements.
Yep.
So if you go and take something to support an area of your body that's under stress, okay, that may offer some support right now, but then you have to go work on the underpinning. So it's like, if you look in your home and you've got like cracks everywhere and like the door jams and the window casings are separating, that's not a deficiency of pretty paint and like patchwork and all that. That's the foundation. Like, you got to go
Mm-hmm.
underneath, and it's
Mm-hmm.
harder, it's longer, it's
Mm-hmm.
more labor and cost intensive, but you do it. And now everything up top sits and is supported the way it needs to be. And that's like our bodies, So
Mm-hmm.
I understand it can be frustrating for people because it feels like it's hard, but if you start in one area If all you were to do is focus on supporting your digestive system, oh my gosh, so many other things are going to improve. If
Absolutely.
all you focused on right now is getting more rest, so many things
Oh
are going to
man.
improve. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
hydrate more. So
Yeah.
many things are going to improve.
Yeah.
Like, so instead of feeling like we have to do everything, pick one, maybe two things,
Right.
and just anchor yourself into that. That for me is really where the simplicity lives.
Absolutely. And, it's two things that came up for me as you were talking. One, that sort of we have to take back the power and really empower ourselves in our health, first and foremost, and understand that we know our health better ultimately than anyone else, and we know our bodies better. But we also have to get within that same, framework, we have to get out of the mentality of going and getting a pill
Hmm.
for our ails, because a lot of
Yes.
times people are like, oh, I don't want to do medication, but I'll take supplements, and
Right.
I'm a big proponent of supplements. So most people need some level of supplements, but they're just taking whatever has been said to be a good thing without actually knowing what's going on in their body in particular. But also B, they're choosing to have that same mentality of just give me
Yeah.
the pill, essentially. Right. And like you
Yeah.
said, I mean, I absolutely adaptogenic herbs, things like that can be super helpful in the process of working on your adrenals, but you got to get the lifestyle stuff in place.
Yeah.
That
100%.
absolutely has to be, the sleep, your circadian rhythm. These are the things that are naturally, again, our foundations of health
Hmm.
that our body needs in order to thrive, right? So
Yeah.
it's, think about those supplements as taking you to that next level. But as you mentioned, you got to get those foundations in play for it to
Yeah.
work at all,
Yeah.
really, and people
Yeah.
sometimes are like, I don't understand why these supplements aren't working. And it's like, well, because you're not doing the things
Yeah,
to actually,
exactly. And are
yeah.
you taking them? It's another thing I
Right.
say to people, just
Yes.
because you own them, just
Right.
because they are in your house,
Yeah.
if you don't actually take them and you don't take them the way that you're supposed to take them, and see, this is again why the other thing of the difference of trying to self supplement
Hmm.
and self, support versus when you work with a practitioner is that in order for a product to be approved through all
Hmm.
the regulations and be on the shelf, what that means is the dosing they give you on that bottle. They know nothing about you, any other medical
Hmm.
issues going on, anything. So the amount that's in there is the minimum slash maximum amount that they can
Hmm.
safely give without knowing your history, and that is under the RDA.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not a therapeutic dose.
Right.
So if you have someone who is like in a position where their body needs more minerals and
Yeah.
more
Yep.
micronutrition, it's going to be better than nothing, but therapeutically, it is not going to move the needle
Yes.
in the same way as if you were to understand and see based on different functional testing, like, okay, this is really where we need to double down and focus on right now. Let's
Hmm.
increase this for a period of time and then titrate down based on, how your body's feeling. But again, we're not taught that. We're just taught this is the supplement of the week. And in
Right.
the magazine, they said this. And on this show, they said that. So we're like collectors. And then we open the
Yep.
cupboard and we're like, I don't even know what that's for.
Exactly. I mean, every new client that comes to me has their bag of supplements,
Oh my
right?
gosh,
And
it's
they don't
crazy.
know what majority of them are for,
And half of them are expired, and
Yes.
half of them
Yeah.
have like, they're not great quality.
No, not good
And
brands.
so
Yeah.
I always say to people, just slow down
Yep.
on what you're going to purchase,
Yes.
and just be a little bit more patient, try to understand more,
Yeah.
then go and get what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to really reiterate how wonderful this is. One of my favorite parts of functional medicine and functional health
Yeah.
is that we can test
Hmm.
and see levels,
Yeah.
of different nutrient levels, even utilizing the basic serum labs that people, get done each year. There's so much that we can do within that. So we can actually see for you
Hmm.
what your body is deficient in. And
Yeah.
then we can retest to see if things have changed,
Yeah.
after whatever supplements you've included and other changes that you made. And that's, I mean, otherwise it's just so much guessing. know,
Yeah.
and
And
it
it's
can
going
be
to take
damaging.
longer, can be
Yeah.
damaging. Yeah, you can get diminishing returns, cost you more, take a
Hmm.
longer period of time. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So when you ended up starting the Simplicity Project, that was sort of what, all these lessons that you had learned in your own experience.
Mhm.
And then you found your way into the Hormone Project, right? That you're focusing on now.
Yeah, well, the
Mhm.
Hormone Project, we're in our 8th year of
Okay.
it. So the Simplicity Project was birthed in 2012. So I opened up
Hmm.
a brick and mortar space. It was Simplicity Yoga and Fitness Therapy Studios.
Mm.
I had, 6 other practitioners, instructors, members. It was amazing. And in that
Yeah.
journey, it was, taking the previous, like, at that point, 17 years of experience that was all in my head. And I was just like, I got to get this out. And so I
Hmm.
wrote a book called The Simplicity
Nice.
Project. Um, which now it's interesting. I look back and I'm like, oh, I need to go rewrite that because some of the
Right.
information has changed, right? Everything's always
Right.
changing. But that was like a birthplace of
Mm.
of just watching what it created for the women in our community and all the women.
Mm.
And it ended up, it was bestseller on Amazon, but it became a Canadian bestseller, which was
Mm.
huge because that
Hmm.
is like, you can't buy your way onto that list. Like
Mm.
the New York
Hmm.
Times bestseller, there's strategies behind that. And it happened very organically. And
Nice.
that really, in the journey of working with women in the Simplicity Project, which I took the book and created an online program, taking women through every chapter and teaching them,
Mm.
like, not just the reading aspect of it, but the tangible. So it was like the practical and the theory and bringing it to life. That then birthed the Hormone Project. Because what I recognized in so many of the women I was working with is their hormones were showing up as these messengers, these microphones of imbalances, whether it was their adrenals, their thyroid, their periods, they're getting rocked in
Hmm.
perimenopause, whatever was going on,
Hmm. Hmm.
fibroid cyst, all the different things. But I'm like, but that's not actually where it started. So
Hmm.
the Hormone
Hmm.
Project was an opportunity to go in. And now I created another online, and we spend 6 months with these women, and we work with them one-on-one and in a group. And we run blood serum and urinary tests for their hormones. And we run stool tests. And we really look across the board at, like, what is going on in your ecosystem? What's
Hmm.
going on in your body? And then every week they are essentially in school with me. They're in class with me every single week, learning
Hmm.
everything about their body. And the
Hmm.
Hormone Project has become literally like the program in school that we all should have had for
Oh,
our bodies.
love
So
it.
we have moms that come in, and then their daughters come in, and families and friends and all of that. And um and then that's expanding even more. So we launch our Simplicity Women's Wellness Clinic, which is a global virtual clinic that is going to be supporting tweens all the way through until menopause. I'm raising teens. My oldest is my daughter, who's 16. And I started teaching mother-daughter Hormone Project workshops when she was 9, in our
Mm.
home and in our community and all of that. And they would be packed, and it would be, girls as young as 8, 9, 10 years old with their
Mhm.
sisters, their moms, their grandmothers, like generationally. And it's so fascinating when you witness at the youngest of age and the oldest of age, learning information for the first time about a body that you've been born into.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
can
it's
imagine.
like, I feel like we're just getting started.
Oh my God. And I'm so excited that you're doing it from tween, all to menopause,
Mhm.
because as we mentioned earlier, I'm like, wow, how different would my teenage years, my 20s,
Right?
and my 30s would have been had I had that information, right?
Exactly.
And I've talked about this on the podcast before. I think empowerment around your body as a tween also shows up in so many other ways too. If you're concerned with your child being sexually active too
Mhm.
early, for example, like giving them the power to understand their bodies and understand their boundaries,
All
and
of it, right? Like,
it's
when
amazing.
you're under them, to understand what are some of the changes they're going to feel physically,
Yeah.
mentally, and emotionally before they even get a period. Like,
Yes.
why their underwear are all of a sudden wet,
Mm-hmm.
why they
Mm-hmm.
smell different, why the shape of their body is changing, why
Mm-hmm.
1 minute they're happy and the next minute they're crying and want to be alone in their room, why all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden they don't want to talk to you anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why their skin is changing, like, socially, things that happen, all of that. And then when they do get their period, how to understand how to track, how to have
Mm-hmm.
how to have cyclical awareness at such a young age to understand, like, this is what literally your body's going through. We're going to track it. And then, like, do you notice, like, does your chest hurt at certain times a month? Okay, so we want to note that down. This is why. Does your back hurt? What's happening with your mood? What about your appetite? Do you know, like, do your bowels change in digestion? Make it so normal for her that she's just in touch with that. And then automatically, when you empower a young girl, a teen, a woman, boundaries automatically show up because she is more knowledgeable.
Yep.
And if we're more knowledgeable, we're more confident. And if we are confident, we can create that for ourselves. So we will, be responsible for our body autonomy.
Yes.
And for like, this is for me, this is not for me, and speaking up and using our voice. And so, it's just, I've watched it over the years. I've explored and all that. And I'm like, I sit here as a 43-year-old mother, and I'm entering that perimenopausal, period of time in my life. And I just think, what if all these young girls knew what was going on in their body, and then mom was more empowered with her, so that when she had an irregular period, painful period, she was throwing up from cramps, they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, let's just put her on the pill.
Yes. Yeah.
But wait, can we just press pause for a second? Can you bring her on over to us first? Can we spend some time educating you both, ask you more questions? Could we put together, can you give us like 4 to 6 months to just implement some of these suggestions? What if we could reduce her discomfort by 50% and improve her connection to her body by 50%? What would that mean? What would it mean to have 6 months less on synthetic hormones in that young girl's body? What would it mean for her to potentially not have to go on the pill at all, because we balanced out some other things in her system and she wasn't in that same situation? That changes the trajectory of that girl's health moving forward.
Yep.
Like the birth control pill shuts down pituitary function. We do not stimulate, FSH and LH. We do not ovulate. It binds up our testosterone. Sex hormone binding globulin goes to the roof. It changes our gut microbiome. It impacts our neurotransmitters. And listen, I was on the pill for 7 years. I'm grateful for that period of time that I'm adopted. My mom was 16 years old when she had me. I understand very clearly what can happen, having sex when you are young. Yeah. But that being said, also wasn't educated at all. So I look out there into the world and I see all these young girls and all these moms, and it literally breaks my heart when I hear story after story of, well, the doctor said that, the only thing we could do was to put her on the pill to regulate it, to give her her period.
Right. There's to regulate her hormones.
And then that poor girl stays on it for however long, and she comes off, and now everything comes surging back to the surface. Like I said, I feel like we're just getting started. Yes. And I feel like we're sitting in a time in the world where these girls are hungry for the information. They want to know. They're asking the questions, but if we as mom aren't educated, we don't know how to answer them.
Right. On that point, when I probably not the first year of my period, but, year 2 was when the horrible cramps kicked in for me, having to go home from school on the first day of my period, the throwing up, the like having to cry myself to sleep kind of situation. And my mom had the same thing, right? When she was young too. And she kind of always had bad cramps. And so case in point, right? She didn't understand why. That was just something that was sort of put on her, it was something that her body did. And then we just thought, well, genetically, I had the same issue, and it's so incredible to me now because neither of us had to go through all of that pain for that long, and I was put on birth control eventually. I didn't go on it until college, but I did it because of that, and it's just like, oh my God. I mean, the acne that I had in high school, all of those things that could have been so different had I had that knowledge then.
Yeah. And it's like, and if we looked at it from a functional perspective, you as that young girl with the discomfort, it's like, okay, is there hyperplasia in place? Like, do you have an extra thickened lining, which is going to increase your risk for fibroids and for endometrial changes to happen? And so then, okay, can we support your liver and your gut so that you are breaking down, metabolizing and detoxing those hormones? And then could we give you some cramp bark or some shepherd's purse or some other things, some, combination of that with some Vitex, so that we're supporting all these areas,
Mm-hmm.
stabilize your blood
Blood
sugar,
sugar. Absolutely. Blood
like
sugar was the key for sure that I was missing out
all
on.
of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, none of that's a prescription. It's
Right.
going to cost us less. And now what you do for that girl and that woman is you teach her that her body can actually do this when she's
Mm-hmm.
given the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, the biggest takeaway. It's not about like what's right and what's wrong. It's, if we grow up in a body as women where we have been taught to outsource everything, like all the answers live outside of us, our body's not capable of that. How could we possibly stay healthy and heal on our own? That's what majority of society and the industries want us to believe. You
Mm-hmm.
need us in order for you to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. I believe that if you connect yourself with a couple of key educators, mentors, education in your life, you can learn enough where you understand that most of those solutions live inside of you. You just need someone to
Absolutely.
teach you how to knit those together. And
Right.
then if you try all those things and you were like, no, things are still not working, then how grateful are we that we have the option to
Yes.
now look at conventional medicine?
Yes. 100%. And, when we look back over time, this was all information that women had, right? That got lost over time of oppression of women, right? And
Mm.
there's still a lot of people out there that don't want women to essentially have body autonomy, right?
Yep.
And so in stepping into this, it's like we're taking true control of our lives, of our health, all of those things. And with the knowledge that, as you mentioned earlier, we have inside, it was there, in our brains for so long, but then got suppressed over time. And so here
Yeah.
we are just kind of reconnecting to that. And then, going on the other side of the spectrum from the tweens, going into the perimenopausal time, going into menopause, doesn't
Mhm.
have to be this like horrendous experience that so many women,
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of clients of mine, other women that they maybe were on birth control until their late 30s or early 40s, or maybe that, things weren't that bad. And then suddenly perimenopause kicks in and they're just like,
Mhm.
what, my whole entire life is blown up over this, and it's
Yeah.
like, if we had that information earlier, then
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, and there's so many good supports and so
Yeah.
many options along the way. And hysterectomies should be at the last option,
Oh gosh,
right?
it is. I mean, we specialize so much with women in perimenopause in our practice in the Hormone
Mhm.
Project. I would say 85% of the women who
Mhm.
we are working with are perimenopause and like early menopause. So they're
Mhm.
in that 12-month period of time where they've just gone through the 12 months. And
Mhm.
so the top three things that are recommended to these women are, let's put you on the pill until
Mhm.
you just like get to, we're working with women who are in their early 50s, who their doctors are like,
Put
well,
them
let's
on the
keep you on
pill.
the, oh my God, because they have irregular periods. It's like,
Yep.
that's going to
That's
happen when you're
that's
in
normal.
perimenopause. That's, you're
Yeah.
having anovulatory cycles. You're not ovulating every
Yeah.
single month now. Your estradiol is actually starting to decrease. That's
Right.
the normal physiological process of us as women. But what happens is there's that, then there's ablation,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Where they
Yep.
go in and cauterize, they burn
Yep.
off that extra thickening. Because a lot of times what will happen for women in perimenopause is they are now getting heavy,
Yep.
painful periods, gushing, can't leave the house. Their whole period comes in 2 days. They aren't being checked properly for fibroids because a lot
Right.
of the times those can be signs of fibroid issues as well too.
100%.
Um,
Mhm.
or they're being recommended to do an oophorectomy or a radical hysterectomy.
Mhm.
And those are the prongs.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yep.
options these women are given.
Yep.
And it's like, maybe that might end up being what has to happen at some point. But we have got, 6, 12, probably 18 months ahead of us that we could actually start to work on supporting your body. And if you did end up having to have, a partial or a full hysterectomy for whatever reasons, your system now from doing the groundwork is going to be so much stronger that it's not going to feel like the rug was pulled out from under you
Right.
when they go and remove an organ out of your body.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but they scare us like you don't
Yes.
have time. And listen,
Yep.
I want to say sometimes things are discovered in our bodies where it is at a stage where it has just progressed and gone too far.
Absolutely.
And if we need to have a certain surgery, then we need to have it. But then we still need to work with support team who can help us to now look at what are some of the things we have to do. Like, do we need to look potentially at bioidentical hormone replacement
Yes.
therapy?
Yeah.
Do we need to look at botanicals, herbs, homeopathy, Chinese medicine? How are we going to keep you feeling vital
Hmm.
and not like you've just been run over by a truck?
Right. Absolutely. And, the reality that I can't help but press on again and again because of my own experience is that, many doctors can act like, oh, we do these surgeries a million times. They're no big deal. Even if you don't have the experience that I did, which was my first surgery ever, right? That was a myomectomy. It was supposed to be kind of an easy get the fibroid out. And, through that process, obviously, I learned that when they have a tool that is heated in your body, it can easily hit against local organs, including our colon and our bladder. There's also, the possibility of being nicked when they go to
Mhm.
cut things out.
Mhm.
And so, these are all things that happen, A, more often than is talked about,
Mhm.
and B, even if none of that happens, just the anesthesia, the impact of anesthesia on our body, all of these things is really intense on the body. And so,
Mhm.
again, we certainly need it in certain situations. And I'm super grateful for, the emergency surgeons that saved my life.
Yes.
Like they had to cut me up and remove half my colon. They saved my life. But to go in with reverence and having tried all of these other things first. And
Yeah.
it goes back once again to kind of what we're talking about with birth control is we're not really given informed consent about all of the possible complications with these things and the impacts that they have on the body.
Mhm.
And also, if you are going to do that surgery, there's so much good prep you can do nutritionally and
Mhm.
with herbs and
Mhm.
things before and after that is
Yeah.
just going to ease a lot of the symptoms.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's how, as we move through these different hormonal transitions in our life, and even understanding, like yesterday, I was interviewed on a podcast that's all about perimenopause and menopause, is that, perimenopause is a second puberty that we go through.
Hmm.
And there's a lot that changes, and it's never the same for any two women.
Hmm.
And it can be over the period of a decade that it happens in your body. It can be
Hmm.
the period of a couple of years, depending
Right.
on what you're dealing with in your life. And, I was asked yesterday, the woman who was interviewing me is in her mid 50s, and she was saying, this is what I did once I hit menopause. What are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm living my life in my 40s the way that I want to feel in my 50s and 60s
Mm,
and 70s.
mm,
So
mhm.
I don't have a lot of perimenopausal symptoms right now.
Right.
My period length has shifted, is shorter by like 1 or 2 days,
Mhm.
but that's pretty much it. But I am doing all of the things like staying on top of my blood work and that. I have a great functional practitioner I work with where I might get ahead of the game and start to do some bioidenticals when I notice
Yes.
some things instead of waiting to have
Yes.
hot flashes and not be sleeping and all of this or that. I'm eating in accordance with the way I move my body with my body and my cycle instead of just following some arbitrary plan of just like, trying to burn as many calories and get as
Mhm.
many, points on my wearable device.
Mhm.
I don't care about any of that. And listen,
Yeah.
I've been teaching group fitness since I was 17. I've been teaching it for 26 years now almost. And
Mhm.
I taught the hardest classes. When I owned my studio, I taught 20 classes a week, yoga, Pilates, bar, strength, spin, boot camp, survivor, you frickin' name it.
Mhm.
And for the last almost 5 years, I have trained completely based on the 4 phases of my cycle.
Mm,
My
nice.
body has never felt or looked better or
Mhm.
had the composition it does now.
Mm,
I didn't
mhm.
realize how much inflammation I was holding on to
Absolutely.
by living an ambitious life and being a
Mhm.
mother, and then going and pushing myself so hard all the time in the gym. Because when I did that, that is what I told myself was me time.
Right.
That's where I got to show up for myself. And what a change to decrease how long I work out for, only train to an intensity at certain times a month where I can really
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
Optimize recovery. I mean, to
Mhm.
me, recovery is more important than the performance most days of the week.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's to me, it's so beautiful thinking about truly syncing with our cycle,
yeah.
when you really sit back and say, wow, we have these different superpowers at different points in our cycle.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
here is a time that I'm going to focus on this aspect. And here's a time where I'm going to focus on this aspect. And I'm going to move my body in particular in ways that feel really good and supportive to it. It just, we talked so much about adrenal dysregulation in the beginning. This, is a huge component of that because women, even when their adrenals are dysregulated, still feel like, oh, I got to go do the hit, and it's like, that's not a good, that's not really the best option when you're in that place,
Right.
but it's so much of that mentality that they're still stuck in of this is what I have to do in order to achieve this. And,
Yeah.
whenever I start doing this to myself, because I can still get caught in it, it's like, where do I feel best when I'm in
Mhm.
like flow state with my body,
Yeah.
and really listening to it. It's not when I'm pushing against the signals in my body or pushing or
Yeah.
telling myself I have to do something, and so, but as you mentioned, it's like really working with practitioners that understand this and can help you figure this out
Mhm.
is game changer.
I think it is probably the best investment we can ever make.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
It's yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. And I love that you are working, sort of taking it to the next level with women that are really trying to lead and
Mhm.
hold all this, stuff in a way that is really supportive of their bodies as they're trying to help other women support their bodies.
Yeah, and that is it, right? Is like within the Audacious Woman, it's my business mentorship program. I work
Hmm.
with practitioners, clinicians, trainers, chiros, RMTs who that is what they do all day long is hold space for others. And they're
Hmm.
really feeling the impact of that. And so
Hmm.
it's supporting them in that way, but it's also helping them to build their business in a way where we can create an incredible amount of wealth in our life and
Hmm.
impact and have time and space and
Hmm.
not fall under that guise of there's only one way to do it. Absolutely not true. There's multiple ways. And
Hmm.
it's like I sit over here and I'm like, I've built an entire company organically. And I'm part of a lot of communities where other people have built those, off of tons of ad spend. And it's worked well for them
Hmm.
that way. And it's worked
Hmm.
well for me that way. It's not one or the other.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
figuring out for you, what's your core message? Like how much clarity and focus do you have around who you are and what you do? And
Mm,
do other
mhm,
people know that? I
mhm,
always say to the women that I mentor, if I were to ask you today to come on my podcast and share your message in like 2 minutes about who you are and what you put out into the world, could you do that?
mhm, mhm,
And if the answer is no, I don't know how clear and focused you are on what you're putting out in the world, which is why it can feel like you're spinning your wheels and you put
mm,
all this energy and effort
makes
in and you're
sense.
not seeing it on the back
Yep,
end.
yep.
So, yeah, I think
It's back to simplicity again,
it's
really,
back to
right?
simplicity and it's back to like, you have this gift for a reason, own it
Mm,
and get
mhm,
creative as heck with it. Like,
mhm.
stop being afraid of what isn't going to work and just throw, 50 different things against the wall and see what sticks.
Figure it out, absolutely. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's life really, in a
Yeah,
nutshell right there.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, let everybody know where they can find you.
So for health and hormones and mindset, Jenn Pike over
Mhm.
on Instagram, and that's with two N's. For business, The Audacious Woman. And then for everything and anything else, jenpike.com. And the podcast is The Simplicity Sessions.
Nice. And I know that you have other practitioners that work with you too in the
Mhm.
hormone program, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
4 other functional medicine practitioners
That's great.
that are coaches within the Hormone Project. And then we have the launch of the Global Women's Wellness Clinic, and that is a whole slew of other practitioners. Everything from, like I said,
So
the teen
cool.
and tween to pelvic floor health, intimacy health, cognitive behavior therapy, body recomp, all of it.
So cool. You are such a
Yeah.
powerhouse.
Well, I'm
Thank
not doing it alone. I
Right,
really
of
believe in
course.
collaboration and community and
Yeah.
but I'm excited to be the, just to get it out there and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, everyone go check out Jen's information and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, you guys, I will see you next time.